Hi, this is Christine for Trinity Stamps. Today we're going to be looking at the blendability brushes. If you watched my video last week, I've included this portion, but I wanted to go over it again. I'm going to show a little bit more. I did some playing around with the brushes, and I found one interesting thing that created something I thought that was really unique and interesting, and something I'm going to do quite often. So again, in the set of brushes that you get from Trinity Stamps, there's a set of 5 brushes, and they're these sizes: a big size, um, 2 medium sizes, and 2 smaller shaped brushes. And I've mostly played around with the middle brushes and the smaller brushes. And the interesting thing about these brushes is that they can stand up, which is really useful, because they take up a lot of room if they're lying down. So here again, using Distress Oxide, I tested a foam handle with a Trinity Blendability brushes, and the Trinity brush is just so much easier to use. You can put it on heavy, as I'm doing here, or you can do it light with a light hand, and you don't need to tap it on the side. You just need to, you can go right away to your paper, and it smooths out, and it really honestly looks perfect. And as I'd mentioned last week, I have always had a lot of problems with the foam handle. And some people have no problems, but I'm definitely a person that has struggled with it to make it look. And I'm so glad I don't have to worry about that anymore. I mean, these brushes are just I'm so happy to have them. I'm thrilled to be using them, and I hope that you find them as enjoyable to use as I do. I did play around with them quite a bit, and by a happy mistake, I found something that creates kind of a unique look, which I'm going to show in a moment. So again, I wanted to compare it. This was a pretty heavy hand of the blendability brush compared, and now I'm going to compare it to the foam handle. So again, this is just, normally you should tap it off to the side, and you can't just go right to the paper. And here I'm using a heavy hand and going right to the paper, and you can see it's not as smooth, it's not as soft as I would like to have it. Here you can get a softer look when you really tap it to the side and get it moving, get the color moving on the paper first, and then take it to the area that you want to use. So here I'm doing a lighter hand just to show that you don't have to tap it to the side. You just kind of use a very light hand to create sort of this dreamy look. And I mean, it's just fantastic. So it's just up to you. So this is a piece that I was playing around with it, and I didn't video it myself making this. I had cleaned a brush, and it was actually quite a bit wetter than I had thought it would be. So I didn't realize that it was wetter than it should be, so it actually played with the paper quite a bit. This is a heavy cardstock, probably 110 pound, and it's just, so these are the 2 colors I'm using. I'm using Oxide Distress colors, Tumbled Gloss and Mowed Lawn. So I've wet the brush, and you can see on the pad, and that doesn't upset me at all. It's a wet brush, and I've taken to it, and you can see by the outside paper that you can see the wetness more than on the heavy cardstock. So what I did is I started with a much more wet brush than I had realized it was. I'd started putting color on, and it sort of puckered up some part of the paper and stretched out other parts. So it almost looks like um, wherever I added color, it's kind of stretched, and the part where I didn't add color is kind of puckered up. So it just kind of creates an additional puffiness for the clouds that I didn't expect. So again, this will only happen if your brush is wet. And here you can see by the outside paper, I just used copy paper underneath, that it's quite wet. If you look at the top, it's starting to wrinkle up. And I'm smoothing it out a little bit more. And I did the same thing with the mowed grass on the bottom. So I'm just trying to recreate what I've made on the side there. And it just kind of creates a watercolory effect that has even more dimension than expected. So this is something I'm going to continue to play around with a lot more, and I can see myself making a lot of skies with clouds in them. You can still smooth it out quite a bit, even if it's wet. As you see here, I'm trying to smooth out the grass. The only thing is that you don't want to do it too much because you'll affect the paper. So here, it's a little bit hard to tell. I'm trying to put it back and forth, but if you in real life, it's puckered and stretched the paper some. There, I probably put a little too much brushing, so it's kind of pilled the paper a little bit, but that's not something that bothers me. But I love the effect on the clouds, and that was really unexpected. And again, this is not watercolor paper, it's just heavy cardstock. So I'm sure the effect on water paper color will be even more interesting. So I played around with some stuff, and I'm not showing it here, but I did play around. I just wanted to see what would happen with Versamark ink if you just kind of, I'd used a bigger brush, and I was hoping to get some sort of dotted effect, but that didn't work out too well, so I'm not showing that part of the video. But here, I was thinking for sort of big snowballs, big snow blotches. So I'm using here very puffy embossing powder. So here I'm just going to heat emboss it with my heat gun. And then I'm going to add a few more splotches. I actually like, I think I pressed it way too hard with the brush, so I think if you use it very fine splotches, it actually comes out smaller and would look more like heavy snow falling, and that's kind of the look I was going for. And I love this puffy embossing powder. Both WOW and Hero Arts have this puffy embossing powder. So here I'm going to add a few more dots, and I'm going to be a little more delicate, and because it's very hard to see when you've touched very faintly, and I didn't expect as much embossing powder to adhere. So when you do it more with a lighter hand, then I think it's even prettier. Those small splotches are way prettier than the big ones. I pressed down way too hard. But again, I'm just sort of playing around. I'm not going to make this into a card. I just wanted to see what else I could do. I will try this technique again in a little while, but for today's card, and those blotches are much prettier. For today's card, I just put together the background panel I'd made that I showed, and just some, instead of coloring today, I just wanted to focus on the blendability brushes, and I'm using the Rhino Bird Day set from Trinity Stamps, and I simply just Copic colored and adhered these images to just finish the card. So thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the video.